Bonuses are discretionary, and I've decided to reward the people who've contributed most to the company's growth. My son took on significant management responsibilities this year. My daughter streamlined our operations. That's leadership. I was still standing there with my hand raised. 50 people in that meeting, and every single one of them found something fascinating to look at that wasn't me. Phones, papers, the water stain on the ceiling tile, anything. I'd asked a simple question: so when do the rest of us get our bonuses? My boss had just announced record profits of $3.2 million. Everyone had cheered. Then he'd announced his son got $180,000. His daughter got $160,000. The rest of us got a speech about teamwork and how proud he was of everyone's hard work. I lowered my hand. My face felt hot, but I kept my expression flat because I'd learned a long time ago that showing emotion at work was the same as losing. He didn't even look at me when he dismissed the meeting, just gathered his papers and walked out. People started moving, talking in low voices, avoiding my eyes. I sat there, 10 minutes, 15. The room emptied. I stayed. I kept thinking about the manufacturing account I'd closed in April, the retail chain in June, the consulting firm in September that brought in $800,000 alone. I'd worked nights, weekends. I'd missed my sister's wedding because he'd called me 2 days before and said we needed to fly out for an emergency pitch meeting. "This is big," he'd said. "This is your chance to prove yourself." I'd proven myself over and over, and his son had gotten $180,000 for management responsibilities. I'd met his son twice. The first time, he'd asked me if I was the new person from accounting. The second time, he'd forgotten my name entirely and called me, "Hey, you." His daughter worked 3 days a week. I knew this because I worked 5 and sometimes 6 and 7, and I'd see her coming in late on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, always carrying a smoothie, always looking at her phone. Last month, she'd spent 3 weeks rearranging the break room furniture and painting one wall pale green. That was apparently what streamlining operations meant. Before I tell you what happened next, thank you for staying with me through this. I need to say this out loud to someone who'll actually listen. Tell me where you're listening from right now. I want to know I'm not alone in this. My name is Corinne. I'm 31. People usually remember me because I have this habit of taking notes on everything. Always have a notebook with me. Always writing things down. My mom used to say I was born watching, born noticing things other people missed. I don't know if that's true, but I do know I've never been the loudest person in a room. I've never been the most charming. What I am is thorough, patient, and once I decide something matters, I don't let it go. I grew up in a town where nobody talked about ambition like it was a good thing. My mom worked 3 jobs to keep us fed after my dad left. She cleaned houses in the morning, worked retail in the afternoon, did bookkeeping for a small accounting office at night. I watched her leave before dawn and come home after I was supposed to be asleep. I watched her hands crack and bleed in winter. I watched her smile anyway, tell me and my sister that things were going to get better. When I was 16, I asked her why she never complained. She looked at me for a long time before she answered. Complaining doesn't change anything. Working does. I believed her. Maybe that was my first mistake. I put myself through college, scholarships, loans, working campus jobs that paid minimum wage. I studied marketing because I was good at understanding what people wanted before they knew they wanted it. I graduated with honors and a debt that felt like it was crushing my chest every time I thought about it. I worked 2 jobs after graduation, one at an advertising agency, where they paid me almost nothing and expected everything. One at a restaurant where I smiled at customers who snapped their fingers at me and left 10% tips. I did that for 2 years, saved every dollar I could, paid down the debt slowly, painfully. Then I met him at a networking event. My boss. He was standing by the bar, talking to 3 other men in expensive suits, and something about the way he held himself made me think he was someone worth knowing. I didn't approach him. I listened. He was talking about his business, how he'd built it from nothing, how he needed people who were hungry, who understood that loyalty and hard work meant something. When he went to get another drink, I was standing next to him. "You said you need people who are hungry," I said. "I'm hungry." He looked at me, really looked. "Tell me why I should hire you." I didn't give him a pitch. I asked him questions about his business, what his biggest challenge was, where he saw growth potential, what kept him awake at night. He talked for 20 minutes. When he finished, I told him 3 things he could do differently. specific things, concrete. He wrote them down on a napkin. 2 weeks later, he called me, offered me a job. The salary was less than I'd hoped for, but more than I'd been making. He said, "Prove yourself here, and you'll go far. I reward people who deliver." I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. The first year, I worked harder than I'd ever worked in my life. I learned the industry. I learned the clients. I learned how to read a room, how to know when someone was ready to say yes, how to close a deal without making it feel like pressure. I brought in my first major client in month 7, a small manufacturing company that needed help repositioning their brand. I spent weeks on that pitch. When they signed, my boss took me out to lunch. He said, "This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is what leadership looks like." I thought that meant something. Year 2, I brought in 4 more clients. Year 3, 6. Year 4, the year that ended with that meeting, I'd brought in 11. 11 major accounts. I knew the exact numbers because I kept track of everything. Every pitch, every meeting, every late night and early morning. I documented it all in my notebooks because some part of me, even then, knew I might need proof someday. His children had started working at the business during year 3. His daughter first, then his son 6 months later. The announcement came in an email. Thrilled to welcome my daughter to the operations team and my son to business development. Family is everything, and I'm proud to build something we can pass down. I didn't think much of it at first. Rich kids working for their parents was normal. I figured they'd do whatever they did, and I'd keep doing what I did. But then I started noticing how he talked about them in meetings, how he'd mention his daughter's ideas even when she hadn't said anything, how he'd credit his son with insights that had come from me or from others on the team. And when I'd see them in the office, they'd be on their phones, talking about weekend plans, leaving early. I told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't there to judge them. I was there to work. The meeting where everything broke happened on a Thursday, November. The weather had turned cold, and everyone was already thinking about holidays. He'd sent a message the day before saying we were having an all-staff meeting to discuss end-of-year performance. I thought maybe, finally, he'd acknowledge what I'd done. What we'd all done. When he said $3.2 million profits, people clapped. We'd never hit numbers like that before. Then he started talking about bonuses, and I felt something in my chest lift. This was it. His son's name, $180,000. His daughter's name, $160,000. Then silence. He smiled at the rest of us and said, "I know this has been a challenging year for everyone. Your hard work hasn't gone unnoticed. Let's keep this momentum going into next year." That was when I raised my hand. That was when I asked my question. That was when everything I'd believed about hard work and fairness and earning your place shattered into pieces so small I'd never be able to put them back together. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word. The way he'd said discretionary, the way he'd called giving his children hundreds of thousands of dollars, rewarding contribution, the way 50 people had looked away from me like I was, embarrassing myself just by asking. I got up at 4 a.m. and opened my laptop. I pulled up my records. Every client I'd brought in over 4 years. Every contract. Every dollar amount. I made a spreadsheet. By the time the sun came up, I had numbers that told a story nobody wanted to hear. Out of the $3.2 million profits, my work had generated $2.1 million, almost 2/3. And I'd gotten a salary that was exactly average for my position. Nothing more. I thought about quitting. I typed up a resignation letter, deleted it, typed another one, deleted that too. Because here's what I knew that other people didn't. My boss had connections everywhere in our industry. I'd seen what he did to people who left. There was a woman named Bridget who'd worked there before I started. She'd quit to take a job at a competitor. He'd called her new employer before her start date. "Just wanted to give you some context on Bridget," he'd said, his voice warm and concerned. Wonderful person. But she struggled with deadlines, had some issues with accuracy in her client reports. "I'm sure she'll do fine with the right supervision." None of it was true, but her new job offer got quietly rescinded. She ended up leaving the industry entirely. I'd watched him make calls like that 3 times in 4 years. Always smiling, always friendly, always destroying someone's next opportunity while pretending to be helpful. So I didn't quit. I went to work the next day, and the day after that, I asked for a meeting with him that Friday. Professional, calm. I'd practiced what I was going to say. I had my numbers ready. He was typing when I walked in, didn't look up. I wanted to talk about compensation, I said. You're well compensated for your role. He still didn't look up. If you're unhappy, you're free to explore other options. That was it. That was the entire conversation. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds, waiting for him to at least meet my eyes. He didn't. I left his office and went to the bathroom, locked myself in a stall, pressed my palms against my eyes until I saw stars, because crying at work was not something I was going to do. Not for him, not for anyone. When I came out, I washed my hands for a long time, looked at myself in the mirror, my mom's voice in my head. Complaining doesn't change anything. Working does. But I'd been working. I'd been working harder than anyone, and it hadn't mattered. So I decided to stop working so hard. Not quit, just stop going above and beyond. Do exactly what my job description required. Clock in, clock out. No more nights. No more weekends. No more missed family events. And I decided to watch, really watch. I started paying attention to everything. How he operated, who he talked to, what he said about himself, versus what was actually true. I'd always been good at noticing things, but now I noticed everything. I watched how he talked about his children at client dinners. We had one a week after my failed meeting with him, a potential account worth maybe $400,000. He spent 20 minutes telling the clients about his son's business degree, his daughter's instincts. They're the future of this company, he said. I'm building something that'll last generations. The clients smiled politely. One of them asked his daughter a question about the services we offered. She looked at me. I answered. She nodded along like she'd been about to say the same thing. I watched how he retold stories. A pitch I'd developed for a tech startup became, in his version, something he'd come up with over breakfast. I told them we could cut their costs by 30%, he'd say to anyone who'd listen. I'd spent 2 weeks analyzing their operations to come up with that number. He'd glanced at my presentation for maybe 5 minutes before the meeting. His children didn't seem to notice, or maybe they did and didn't care. They smiled when he praised them, accepted the credit, never questioned whether they'd actually earned it. But I started noticing cracks. His daughter would sometimes get this look on her face when he talked about her accomplishments, something between pride and discomfort. She'd glance at other people in the room, like she was checking to see if they believed him. His son would go quiet when clients asked him detailed questions. He'd defer to his father, or to me. Once, after a meeting, I heard him on the phone with someone. I don't know, man. Sometimes I feel like I'm just here, like I'm not actually doing anything real. They weren't stupid. They were just living inside a story their father had written for them, and they didn't know how to step out of it. 3 months after the bonus meeting, his daughter found me in the break room. I was making coffee. She was holding her phone like she'd been working up courage to approach me. Hey, she said, can I ask you something? Sure. How do you do it? The client work. How do you know what to say? I looked at her. Really looked. She was 26, dressed in clothes that cost more than my rent, and she looked lost. You want to grab lunch? I asked. We went to a small cafe 2 blocks away. She ordered a salad she barely touched. I ordered soup. We talked for 2 hours. She asked me about pitches, about client relationships, about how you build trust with someone who doesn't know you. I answered honestly, didn't simplify it or make it sound easy. Told her about the failures I'd had early on, the times I'd read a room wrong, the deals I'd lost. Do you ever feel like people don't take you seriously? She asked. Every day, but you keep going anyway. What else am I going to do? She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, sometimes I wonder if I've ever actually accomplished anything. Like, anything that's mine. Does that make sense? It made perfect sense. I didn't say that. I just nodded. We started meeting once a week. I didn't plan it. She'd text me, ask if I had time for coffee. I'd say yes. We'd talk about work, about projects she wanted to try, about ideas she had. Some of them were good. I told her which ones and why. Some of them needed work. I told her that too. I never said anything negative about her father. I didn't need to. I just showed her what real work looked like, what it felt like to build something yourself, to earn respect instead of having it handed to you. 6 weeks later, her brother called me. My sister said you've been helping her understand the business. Could we talk sometime? We met at a coffee shop near his apartment. He was quieter than his sister, more uncertain. He told me he'd always felt like he was disappointing their father by not being better at the work. but he didn't know how to get better when everything he tried got dismissed or corrected. He tells people I'm in business development, he said. I don't even know what that means. I just show up and sit in meetings and try not to say anything wrong. I asked him what he actually wanted to do, not what his father wanted, what he wanted. He didn't have an answer. Nobody had ever asked him that before. I started meeting with both of them, separately, always off-site, coffee shops, a park near the office, once at a bookstore where his daughter wanted recommendations on leadership. I never badmouthed their father, never told them they were unqualified or lazy. I just asked questions, made them think, introduced them to people who could mentor them in real ways, not the hollow kind their father practiced. His daughter started asking him detailed questions about deals, who'd actually closed them, who'd done the groundwork. He'd get irritated when she pressed. Why does it matter? The deal got done. She'd notice the irritation, notice what he wasn't saying. His son started working longer hours, trying to prove himself, coming in early, staying late, but their father kept taking credit for his ideas, the same way he'd taken credit for mine. The son started to see the pattern, started to understand what I'd been living with for 4 years. I didn't tell them what to do. I just helped them see clearly, and I watched their father, watched him get more comfortable, more certain that his legacy was secure, that his children would take over someday and carry on everything he'd built, that his name would mean something long after he was gone. He had no idea what was coming. The months passed. Winter turned to spring. I kept doing my job, just my job, nothing extra. When clients called after hours, I let it go to voicemail and responded during business hours. When my boss asked me to work a weekend, I said I had plans. His face would tighten, but he couldn't say anything. I wasn't refusing to work. I was just refusing to be used. Other people in the office started noticing. A woman named Felicity, who'd been there 6 years, started leaving at 5:30 instead of 7. A man named Gene stopped answering emails on Sundays. It was like everyone had been waiting for permission to have boundaries, and watching me set them gave them that permission. My boss didn't like it. He'd make comments in meetings. Remember when this team was hungry? When people wanted to win? He'd look at me when he said it. I'd look right back, my face neutral. His daughter kept meeting with me. By April, she was talking about things she'd never said out loud before. How she'd never chosen to work for her father. How he'd just assumed. How she'd gone along with it because saying no felt impossible. What would you do if you could do anything? I asked her one afternoon. We were sitting on a bench outside a library. Spring sun, people walking past with dogs and coffee. She was quiet for a long time. I think I'd want to help people. Like, actually help them. Not sell them things or manage their brands. Something that matters. What's stopping you? My father would never understand. Does he need to? She looked at me like I'd said something in a foreign language. His son was changing too. He'd started volunteering at a youth center on weekends, helping kids with college applications. He'd mentioned it casually one day when we met for coffee. It's the first thing I've done that feels real, he said. Like, I'm actually useful. You thinking about doing more of it? I don't know. Maybe. My dad would lose it if I left the business. Whose life is it? He didn't answer, but I could see him thinking. By summer, both of them were asking different questions, not how to be better at the business, how to be honest with themselves about what they actually wanted. I didn't push. I just listened, asked more questions, let them find their own answers. Their father announced a major investor meeting in July. He wanted the whole family there. His children, his wife. We're going to talk about succession planning, he said in the office, his voice full of pride. About the future of this company, my legacy. His daughter looked at me after the meeting. Her face was pale. You okay? I asked. I don't think I can do this anymore. Do what? Pretend. Pretend I want this. Pretend I'm good at this. Pretend I'm the person he thinks I am. So stop pretending. It's not that simple. Why not? She didn't have an answer. 2 weeks later, his son called me. My sister and I have been talking about what we actually want, about whether we owe him our entire lives just because he's our father. What did you decide? That we don't. We don't owe him that. So what are you going to do? Something that's probably going to break his heart. I didn't ask what. I just said, sometimes people's hearts need to break before they can see clearly. The investor meeting was scheduled for August 15th. I wasn't invited. I was just the employee who brought in the clients, not family. But his wife decided to turn it into a dinner party. celebrate the future. She spent weeks planning it, catering, decorations. She invited 30 people, family, close business associates, people who mattered. His daughter told me about it 2 days before. We were having coffee. Her hands were shaking. "We're going to tell him at the dinner," she said. "Both of us, together." "Tell him what?" "That we're not taking over, that we're leaving." My heart was beating hard. I kept my voice calm. "You sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." The dinner party was on a Saturday. I wasn't there, but his daughter called me the next morning. Her voice was shaking, but not from fear, from relief. "We did it," she said. "We told everyone, in front of everyone." "What happened?" He tried to laugh at first, like we were joking. Then he got angry, really angry. Started yelling about how ungrateful we were, how he'd built everything for us. My brother just stood there, calm, and he said, "You built it for yourself, Dad. You just wanted us to be the proof that you'd won." "What did your father say?" "Nothing." He just stared at him. Then he turned to me, asked if I agreed. I told him I'd enrolled in graduate school, social work, starting in January, that I wanted to do something meaningful, something that was mine. And he begged, actually begged us to reconsider, said we were throwing away everything he'd worked for. My mom just sat there, watching him. She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time, like she'd suspected something for years but never let herself believe it. "How do you feel?" "Terrified. Free. Both." Her brother left for his new job 3 weeks later, a junior position at a nonprofit that worked with at-risk youth, starting from the bottom, learning from scratch. He called me before he left. "Thank you," he said, "for helping me see that I could choose something different. I didn't do anything. You showed me what real work looks like, what it means to earn something. That's everything." His daughter started grad school in January. She texted me photos of her first day. She looked younger, lighter, happy in a way I'd never seen her. Their father called me the Monday after the dinner party. His voice was different, smaller, uncertain. "Did you know about this?" he asked. "Did they talk to you?" "They asked me questions." I answered honestly. "What did you tell them?" "That they had choices, that their lives belonged to them." "You had no right." "I had every right," they asked. I answered, "That's all." He hung up. The business started struggling almost immediately. Clients would call asking for me specifically. I'd take their calls during business hours, do exactly what was required, no more, no less. When they asked if I could take on additional work, I'd say, "You'd need to discuss expanded scope with my supervisor." My boss couldn't fire me. Firing me meant losing the clients who still trusted me, but he couldn't make me care anymore either. I'd shown him exactly what I was worth, and he'd shown me exactly how little that mattered to him. So now I do my job, I collect my paycheck, and I watch him struggle with what he created. His children don't call him much anymore. His daughter told me her mom has started asking questions about the business, about his treatment of employees over the years, about whether the man she married is the man she thought he was. His son is thriving in his new life, actually thriving, building something real, earning respect from people who don't care about his last name. And every single day, my boss has to wake up and face what he lost. Not money, not the business, though that's suffering. He lost the thing he wanted most, his legacy, his proof that he mattered. His children were supposed to carry his name forward, validate everything he'd built, show the world that he'd won. Instead, they walked away. Chose meaning over money, chose authenticity over inheritance, and they did it in front of everyone who mattered to him, in front of his wife, his friends, his associates. He thought his power made him untouchable. He thought his children would always choose him because he'd given them everything. But money can't buy respect. It can't buy genuine love. And it definitely can't buy meaning. I didn't destroy his business. I didn't expose him or ruin him publicly. I just gave his children something he never could. I helped them see that they had permission to choose themselves, to build their own lives, to walk away from a story someone else had written for them. And they chose to walk away from him. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't destruction. It's illumination, helping people see clearly, helping them understand they're not trapped, that they have choices. He gave his children $340,000 in bonuses for work they didn't do. I gave them something worth infinitely more. I gave them themselves back. If you stayed with me through all of this, thank you. Really. Tell me in the comments what you would have done if someone dismissed your work like that. Would you have stayed? Would you have left? Would you have done something different? And if you want to hear more stories about people who found their own kind of justice, you know what to do. Like this, share it, subscribe, because sometimes the best stories are the ones where nobody has to lose everything for the truth to finally matter.